steps are not packed because I'm not going anywhere. A daughter's coming up to me, so I don't have to worry about. She's driving. I don't have to worry about snow. But if you are caught in the weather, my sympathies. I mean, I know what it's like to be caught. I've been in airplane situations or flight situations where they've canceled thousands of flights in a day because of the weather. It's patience helps. If you can pick us up on YouTube, or my heart goes out to you. When you get home, watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. You'll be in a much better mood because you'll know that things could have been worse. I mean, it's hard to believe that, but a little patience for the holidays. Welcome to our Friday show before the Christmas holiday weekend. My name is Emil, Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. My takes on all things considerable. One thing that has me thinking about the cold is that I'm signed up. I got picked to be in this Frigid Fringe Festival in New York City on February 16th is the start for me. I think the whole festival starts on the 15th, but I'll be there on the 16th, the 18th, the 23rd of February, the 25th, the 26th, March 3rd, and March 4th. I got 7 performances, and I'm doing a storytelling stand-up solo performance show. It's kind of an amalgam of things. There's an arc. There will be laughs. I will make you cry. I will make you cry. I will make you say, thank goodness I'm not Asian American. Or thank goodness I'm not a Filipino. Or maybe you'll say, thank goodness maybe I should be a Filipino. I don't know. It's a interesting show. It's been reviewed, parts of it, at fringe festivals around the country. And I'll start publicizing and marketing it more actively in January for the February date. It's one of those things where, you got to save the dates if you're in New York or on the East Coast. But if you're not, they're going to live stream it too. So I'll get out the information. So if it's live streamed, wherever you are, if you're in Hawaii or California or who knows where, the Philippines, you can check it out. The New York City Frigid Fringe Festival. You think it's cold now. Just wait till February. Oh, I mean, this is the Arctic bomb, right? We got the Arctic bomb now. I don't know what's going to happen in February, although the optimists on the East Coast are telling me, just wait, February is going to be so balmy. This is the Arctic bomb now, but it's going to be balmy in February. An early spring, and all the flowers and the trees will be full and everything will be blossoming. I hope. I like nice weather, an early spring, but I kind of doubt it. February 16th, that's a little too early, but we'll see. That's when my show, the show is called Emil Amok, Lost NPR Host Found Under St. Mark's. And oddly enough, Under St. Mark's is the name of the theater that I'll be in New York City. It's off Broadway. Off Broadway. Under St. Mark's Theater. So, Lost NPR Host Found Under St. Mark's, intended to sound like a true crime kind of thing, but it's a true crime comedy of sorts. My storytelling, some jokes. I do not sing and I don't tap dance. So there, you can eliminate those things. Anyway, welcome to our program. I'm here Monday through Friday. I think next week we're going to be somewhat erratic or have shorter shows. We might be on Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific live, but they'll be shorter because of the holiday taking somewhat of a hiatus. You could take a semi-hiatus. So that's what that's going to be. On today's show, I want to talk about the big stuff. We got Professor Daniel Phil Gonzales, Asian American Studies, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, to talk politics with that January 6th report. Also, hey, did you know December 21st, 1898 was the anniversary date when President McKinley signed the benevolent assimilation. Benevolent assimilation. That I'll have Dan talk about that. That's interesting because that is the nice way to say we're screwing you guys, Philippines. Benevolent assimilation. So that's coming up. Dan Gonzales talking about that. We'll talk about the January 6th report, of course. Dan's been going through that, and we'll talk about some of the things that struck him about the January 6th report, the final report. I was talking to him before, and he said there's a bunch of things in it that were not part of the hearings. And then when you read the details, it's like, we're going to get into that. We're also going to talk about the budget that was passed. Congress had to pass the budget today, $1.7 trillion. The Senate passed it yesterday. It went to the House today. The House had all sorts of, well, are we going to like hold up and close, shut down the government? And I guess there's no appetite for that, which is a good sign for the holidays, because in the past there was an appetite for it. Not good, but they passed a $1.7 trillion budget. It's going to fund the government till next September. And there's some surprises. There's some good things. And Kevin McCarthy was out there making noise, but ultimately people passed it. Some no votes that are surprising. Some Democrats voted no. I mean, it passed so easily that if there were some things in the budget that you needed to have cover on to say, oh, well, I voted against that, you could. But in the end, everyone voted for it. Or not everyone, but like I said, aside from the couple that voted no, it was a bipartisan effort, which is kind of a good sign. And we're also going to talk about Christmas. You know, I just really like Biden's Christmas message yesterday, because maybe that's why the House passed it so quickly. I mean, they're off, going home now. So we'll talk a little about Christmas, just to be in a Christmassy mood. It's Sunday, right? But I want to begin by talking about what I've identified as the Asian American story of the moment. It still is, even though there are all these big stories breaking. This is a big deal. What's happening with Thomas Keon, who is the chancellor of Purdue University Northwest. This broke yesterday, and you're starting to see the stories now out there. The Purdue Board of Trustees has issued a formal reprimand to Thomas Keon, the Purdue University Northwest chancellor, in response to a racist comment he made during a commencement ceremony on December 10th. Now, a reprimand isn't a resignation, and most sane people, most people who dislike racism, most people who embrace social justice have been calling for Keon to resign. Faculty, students, people of color, people in general who believe in justice. They have demanded that Keon resign. And if you're saying, Emil, a little too harsh, don't you think? It could have been just like the first time. But if you've seen the video, we played the video here, you know his remarks were a mocking of an Asian accent. And he was just playing around with another speaker who did some gibberish. But the other speaker didn't identify it as a specific country or ethnic people, just said, this is gibberish. Keon made the mistake to say, oh, this was my Asian attempt. Keon's white. He doesn't have to do an Asian attempt at a bad accent. So that's what people are reacting to. There's like 7,000 signatures on a change.org petition. The faculty voted no confidence. And even though Keon apologized on December 14th, remember, the slur, let's call it what it is, a racist slur, happened on December 10th December 14th, he issued an apology saying they were offensive and insensitive, these comments. We are all human. I made a mistake. I assure you, I did not intend to be hurtful, and my comments do not reflect my personal or our institutional values. Not good enough. The faculty senate then voted to demand his resignation, and then they voted 135 to 20, a no confidence vote, the Purdue Northwest Faculty Senate. And so today, all the Board of Trustees did after, back on the 14th, accepting Keon's resignation, not resignation, his apology. They accepted his apology. They now are reprimanding him, which I'm sure doesn't hurt a whole lot. So I want to call in Professor Daniel Phil Gonzales, who is a veteran academic. He's so veteran, he's emeritus at San Francisco State University College of Ethnic Studies. Hi, Dan. Dan, you're frozen. Now you're frozen. Oh my God. He's frozen. He's frozen. Dan, you're going to have to come back. So I hope Dan, we'll fix his connection. But the problem now is you've reprimanded him, and that's it. I don't know how you reprimand someone and then say everything's okay when the faculty, the majority of the faculty, about 87%, have voted no confidence in the guy. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Oh, here's Dan. Hi, Dan, you there? Oh, Dan, I don't hear you. Okay, we're gonna have to try again. We're gonna have to try again on Professor Daniel Phil Gonzales is gonna have to come back and maybe go back in and out. I don't know. But this reprimand is interesting because here's what the Board of Trustees said. They didn't elaborate on what the formal reprimand was, which, kind of surprises me. Like, oh, we're going to suspend him for this. It's a reprimand. But they warned that a repeat incident would have consequences. So this is like a first strike. A first strike. This is what Purdue's official spokesperson. Let's get his name here. Berghoff is the name of the Purdue trustee, the board chair of Purdue University, Mike Berghoff, called Keon's statements extremely offensive and insensitive. Each member of the Purdue Board of Trustees has had the opportunity to review the entirety of the December 10th commencement at Purdue University Northwest to examine the context of Chancellor Keon's remark. Berghoff said, each has concluded that in addition to its being extremely offensive and insensitive, as Dr. Keon himself has acknowledged, this offhand attempted humor was in poor taste, unbecoming of his role as chancellor, and unacceptable for an occasion that should be remembered solely for its celebratory and unifying atmosphere. The board has therefore issued a reprimand. Okay, reprimand, not asked him to resign. But they know that this was bad. Now, how can you acknowledge that it's bad, but then say, we're going to let him go? Thomas Keon is a white male. If this were anyone other than a white male, that person would be gone. That person would be gone. And this guy knows Keon has been around the block. He served in administrative positions at the University of Central Florida, Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, Florida Atlantic University, the University of Missouri and Columbia. He's no rookie. He might be ready to either step down or retire or keep his salary, but not lead the university. I mean, how can you lead a university, Purdue University Northwest, when you have such an overwhelming no confidence vote? So let's bring on Professor Daniel Phil Gonzales again. Hi, Dan.
Yeah, I hope we're consistent now. But
Yeah,
sorry.
no,
Yeah,
no problem.
internet's been bad out here today.
No, no,
Yeah.
no problem.
Well,
So,
first of
so,
all,
so
it's Purdue. It's Purdue.
yeah,
Okay.
Purdue.
And if you
Well,
look at
Purdue,
Keon's,
yeah,
yeah, go
Purdue
ahead.
is the big university, but Keon is part of the satellite at Purdue University Northwest, which is in Hammond, Indiana, just south of Chicago. So
Okay.
you're saying this is Purdue, and we shouldn't expect much from Purdue?
Uh, you know, it's Indiana, man.
Mm, yeah,
Mr. Pence and the woman that he calls mother
yeah,
is also an example of Indiana culture. I have had students in my classes that hail from Indiana
mm,
and very happily resettled elsewhere,
yeah,
mostly in the Bay Area or in California. Yeah, it's a cultural thing, man. He's been all over the Midwest, basically. I think Missouri. I called it
yeah.
Missouri,
Missouri.
state of
Yeah,
Missouri. He's been in Florida, right?
yeah.
He's kind of got suspect institutions. Institutions reflect the regional culture, at least the regional culture, if not the local culture.
Well, come
So,
on. Here's the thing about Purdue University. The president of Purdue University is Mitch Daniels, who is the former Republican governor, who might run for, another higher office. He has run for president on the Republican side. He's been at Purdue 10 years. And the only reason why he hasn't stepped in is because he is, he's stepping in, he's retiring from the presidency in January 1st. And the board of trustees, the chair said, look, the only one who can do anything about this is the board of trustees or the president. And so, you know, this is a reflection, the decision to reprimand and not fire is a reflection of, as you say, the culture. If this should happen or would have happened anywhere else in California, would this guy have stood a chance to stay on the job?
I think the greater probability is that he would be there would be a massive movement to have him resign, or face expulsion, and most people would rather resign, right, under
Yeah.
the pressure than. So yeah, I mean, but this could have happened. The idea of only getting a reprimand, that could have
Yeah.
happened in Arizona.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. It could happen anywhere where there was a conservative bent.
that's
But
right.
can't I mean, I guess I have a hard time thinking that you can condemn it and saying it's wrong, it's racist, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't represent what our institution's about, and then you leave them on.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that seems to be like, well, what happened to the zero tolerance
I
policy?
think they're balancing. Well, I don't know. Zero tolerance is just it's a bunch of guff. That
Yeah.
stuff is just anti-racist flack. It doesn't mean that the institution that says they have zero tolerance, in some public statement, it doesn't mean that they actually behave accordingly.
Yeah.
There are a lot of institutions in the state of California, the most hated liberal state, right, in the union, that have similar issues.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well,
it's just not as pronounced as it is on in the Midwest, particularly, and also in some places on the East Coast.
so, Dan, am I making too much of this? I mean, to me, here's a guy who is the leader of this university, Purdue Northwest. He's at a commencement ceremony. He makes this slur,
Right.
And he actually, it would have been okay if he just did gibberish and said, "Oh, that's a made up language," but he actually said, "This is Asian.
Yeah, right. That's right.
This is my
He
Asian."
specifically says Asian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, you're not making a big deal out of it. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that part of it is cultural,
yeah.
and he's carrying some of his personal culture with him. So you kind of got to look at where he's from really, and also you got to look at his age group. It's generational.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
what that means then is that, look, if Purdue University wants to put this face out there that, hey, look, we are for diversity, we are for, a university that looks like America. Well, then you don't put that guy out as a leader. You say you become a backbencher, and we'll put someone else at top. You can be a chancellor emeritus, or you could
sure.
be just a
Well,
professor of accounting, like he is.
there's also a lot of yeah. Well, that's he's a business professor, right?
Yeah.
Accounting is in the department or even college of business. And the
Yeah.
colleges of business have been very well known for being racist. I'll be straight up with you, even in the state of California.
In what way? Just in terms of their policies or
They're
how they admit.
okay. I can give you two insider examples, right? When the Chinese market began to open up, even under Nixon,
Yeah.
okay, and in following administrations, including the Carter and the Reagan administration, um, uh, American companies were starting to hire Asian graduates, Asian American graduates, many of them immigrants, and many more immigrant or American born were bilingual and sometimes trilingual. So they were hired uh, to engage the foreign market, right? To engage the Asian markets. Okay,
Yeah.
and the most prominent feature at the time was their interest in gaining foothold in China. All right, several of my students, both graduate students with MBAs as well as BSs in business, and particularly marketing, were hired by companies like that, including big name companies, earth movers, particularly. I won't get specific, but there's only two or three really big earth moving companies, and
Right.
they were competing with the Japanese, who had the advantage of being across a narrower stretch of ocean, right? So
So,
they had
so,
that advantage.
how
Anyway, so
was
the
the
point is that these students had presumed or assumed that they would be able to play a major role in interacting with people in Asia. Instead, several of them got parked. I mean, they went to Asia, okay,
uh,
met briefly, and then came back and were parked in Hawaii, right? And were only used as checking mechanism on some of the lightweight cultural stuff,
oh,
okay?
so
But in
all right.
terms of being front people, they were not being front people. And they asked me why, and I said they don't trust you. I said number one is they don't trust you. What is that? I said it's the stuff that we were talking about in class. That there's this generalized racism, and it's not. People think racism has to take the form of people coming after you with a gun or a noose,
Mm,
or wanting to beat you up. The reality is that racism can take very subtle forms. Mr. Keon, Professor Keon, right, was not exhibiting a subtle form. He was an exhibit. He was exhibiting an outright racist attitude.
so,
Okay,
and
even though
this,
he
yeah,
meant it entirely in fun. It was for him. It was fun. What also disturbed me is if you watch the video, it is really simple. It's really
yeah,
short. You
yeah.
know, there were people behind him that laughed along with him.
Oh yeah, the crowd, people in the crowd were laughing, and people can catch my column. There's a link to the video. Go to aldef, AALDEF.org/blog, and you can get a link to the video where you can see people are laughing, and they're mostly white. How about this? I raised this question before. If Keon were a person of color and he did something like this, or something that would be considered intolerant or racist, he wouldn't be treated with kid gloves like this guy Keon, would he?
Hmm. You know, that's a really interesting question. He, you know, if he was a person of color, non-Asian,
Mm,
okay, then a question that would arise is how willing would people be to, you know, what I was going to raise earlier is it could be that Keon has very strong political, either national or regional connections. And
yeah.
that could be one of the reasons. You know, you can't look at just a situation that's apparent to us.
Wait,
Okay.
it
You
could.
also have to consider the underlying politics.
I mean, it could
But
be the reason why someone's trying to preserve his job.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Because
they could feel donor pressure, right?
yeah,
You know,
I have heard academics, or one, at least one academic in particular, taking the stand of, "Oh, he's not that bad. Oh, what's a little racism? It's racist, but it's not that bad." And I'm sure this was not, like his standard thing.
well, then that person is agreeing and saying essentially, I would do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, oh no, no. This person is doing what Purdue is doing, saying, "Oh, it's racist. We condemn it, but we're not going to fire him. We're just going to, or nor are we going to demand his resignation. We're
Well,
just going to
yeah,
reprimand."
okay, but what I'm saying is that he or she might do the same kind of behavior.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah,
might see themselves committing a mildly humorous action. It could be not against Asians. It could be against somebody else.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Well, it just to see this reaction, I'm bothered because people want to soft pedal this
Yeah.
when it's Asian. But if it were black, if it were like someone making fun of blackface or someone saying the N word, if Keon was doing a black rap using the N word, and he
That would
would,
be pretty severe, though. I don't think that
well, that's
that's
the
not
point.
parallel. It's
But
parallel, but it's not equal to his doing the fake language.
well, if he's saying the N word, you don't think? I
I
mean,
think
to me,
that's much stronger. I think it's stronger by a couple of degrees.
well, all right. What if he's just talking black talk, not the N word, but talking with a black accent, like some white
Then it
basketball
depends on the
players?
context, right? It depends on the context. What he did was say something with an Asian connection outright that was diminishing of
Yeah,
people, right? I mean, he was because the other professor had done gibberish, quote unquote,
yeah,
right? And so he was specifically diminishing Asians. He was
yeah.
denigrating Asians. So
Very,
you got to look at the context.
it was very targeted, very targeted. And so, look, I don't like the idea of a reprimand. Keon's not going to resign, um, although the demands are there. What about the Senate, the faculty senate? There's a no confidence vote. Can someone be the chancellor of a faculty where 87% of those who voted say voted no confidence?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Okay, because it comes down to what the administration is going to do, and it
All
comes
right.
down
So,
to what
all right.
Daniels is going to do,
I
right?
know it's not going to be Daniels. And this is the little twist. The little twist is that Daniel steps down in January and the new president is Meng Chang. Meng Chang, the 40-year-old from
Oh,
Princeton,
that's interesting.
who comes to Purdue 5 years ago. Get this. This is what makes him kind of interesting to me. He took a year off from Purdue as head of the engineering department to work for the Trump administration in the State Department with their
Uh-huh.
anti-Chinese policies.
Oh, ow!
So he's a
That
Trumper.
is very interesting.
So now you tell me when the board of trustees is
It's it's Asian racism,
yeah, the
versus
board of trustees.
versus political chits for
Yeah,
Republicans, man.
yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean, get
god.
this, get this. You
I
know,
I'm so glad you got a little deeper into this than I did. I just kind of, let it go.
well, I just think it's you know, uh,
That is very interesting, my
yeah.
man.
The
That
vote
is very interesting.
The vote did not necessarily have immediate repercussions for Keon unless he decides to resign. The only people with removal power are the Purdue University's Board of Trustees, which have just said we're just going to reprimand, or its president.
Right on. There you
and
go.
and the new president is this guy Meng Chang, 40 years old, smart guy, immigrant from Hong Kong.
There's the magic word.
He went to Stanford, got a BS in electrical engineering and mathematics, BS with honors, an MS and PhD in electrical engineering. Uh, Went to Princeton, where he's got like 25 patents that he holds. I mean, this guy is he's a
He's an
superstar.
achiever, right?
Yeah,
He's an
and
achiever.
he left Princeton to come to Purdue to be the head of electrical engineering. He's now on the management track, and I say in my column on the ALDEF blog, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, wouldn't it be interesting to see if Meng Chang, how he will handle an Asian slur when he is president?
He's
He's the
yeah.
only he's
And
the
you
only
and I
president.
can you are you willing to presume that in his storied career he's had to handle it before?
I'm sure that he's had to handle it before, but
Yeah. Not
I
maybe
mentioned,
not as an administrator, but probably personally.
well, I mentioned in my column on the ALDEF blog and also on Inquirer.net, I say, well, is Meng Chang, how did he handle the xenophobic Trump anti-China science policies that they had there? And how did, and was he there to be the kind of Asian mask to protect against charges of xenophobia? And so now he's on his own, and he's there because of Mitch Daniels, because of the conservative culture, and he's probably conservative himself. And what does he spare the job of Thomas Kean, the race?
My money is yes. My money is he gonna go with the flow, bro.
Yeah, go. Well, that was my sense too. And unfortunately, what that does is it points out the schism that exists between Asian Americans who are social justice warriors and Asian Americans who are,
In to win
uh,
it. In
yeah,
it to win it. That's
there
it.
is
How
that.
do I what's in it for me?
Is it a? I guess it. Yeah, a
Yeah,
self-serving.
I don't think. See, when we say social justice, that people be inclined towards social justice, that has a ring of activism, and I don't think. I think you can take a position without being that assertive. I think you. The simplest position is it fair? Is it
Yeah,
just? Is it equitable? Right?
yeah.
And that is much less than being a social justice advocate. Okay, we need
Well,
more social justice advocates. You know,
well,
everything that we are talking about, including all of our careers, both of our careers, right,
mm,
has depended on people being fair and being
yeah.
just. And there are
And
times when we've had to argue for that, and when we've had to be aggressive in our
if we could argue, I mean, sometimes there's no argument, there's no debate.
right,
You know, uh,
because there's no provision for it. There's no
or
allowance for it.
or there's no power to, not a provision
Exactly.
to get the debate, but no power to either call for it or to have it, because you are you're never the king, you're always the pawn. And
Yeah.
so
No, you're right.
that
I completely agree. It's about power.
yeah,
Um, but even when there's apparent authority, uh, the justice, even when it's provided, at least in theory, right, that there's a letter of law
yeah.
supporting fairness and justice.
There should be,
Yeah.
and like and there's contracts, and there's
Yep.
and there's fairness, and someone's a racist, so what do? There's nothing that says, oh, all racists must go, but this is what the Senate, the Purdue Northwest faculty Senate chair said. He said, we are not demanding his removal to punish him. We require his removal, Keon's Chancellor Keon, because he is not qualified to represent us. He called Keon's ongoing role, quote, an insult to the Asian community. This decision by the Board of Trustees is negligent and unacceptable, and your explanation for your inaction insults our intelligence. This is the faculty senate chair for Purdue Northwest, Thomas Roach, who's a communications professor. He's been leading the charge, asking for Keon's resignation. And like I said, the board of trustees initially just accepted an apology. Now they're reprimanding. And I think it's going to go to the president level. And
Right.
I think the president is going to
I
like back
agree.
out, like you said,
That
and say,
is
hey,
so okay. It's got my attention, man. I'm gonna, I'm gonna watch this, and
if this
I'm probably
happens,
gonna Facebook people to watch it too. So
if this happens, this is going to be the story of Asian America. That one of our own kind says, "Hey, I'm
he
going to show."
apologized.
Yeah, he
It
apologized.
ain't that serious.
I'm going to
Come
show.
on.
Yeah, I'm going to. We're going to be magnanimous. Hey, forget about the 11,000 Asian Americans that Stop AAPI 8 says have, been on the recipient end of any number of minor to major transgressions, hate transgressions. Forget about them. Let's preserve the status of this white guy, Thomas Keon.
Yeah.
So
See, there's a lot of people in our community that just don't accept in the first place that this kind of activity is really all that important, right?
exactly,
They're very dismissive. Yeah.
a lot of people would say, Emil, you've been talking about this is show 455. You talk about it here. You're talking about it on 454, 453, 452. You've been talking about because I don't want the spotlight off this. This is our story.
Yeah.
This is an Asian American story. And it's more Asian America. I mean, we Asian America is part of the January 6th report. It's part of the budget, the $1.7 trillion budget that was passed. It's part of all the. It's part of the weather story. We're all part of it. Yes, but specifically Asian American and fighting the kind of discrimination that we've had to face over how many decades? Ever since Asian Americans or ever since Asians have been in America,
Yep. Yep.
really. The
Yep.
Keon story is our story. And I suggest, I suggest that people who are mad call up Purdue, call up the Purdue Board of Trustees and register your dissatisfaction with their inaction. Actually call up Thomas Keon, the chancellor, and let him know that his actions are not appreciated and that he has no right to lead an institution that claims to be a diverse institution.
Yeah. No, I think those are all very good suggestions, and I'm going to follow up on it personally myself.
Well, look, I mention it to you because you are an academic survivor of all that
For
politics.
for some people, I'm a has-been academic.
Well, no,
I'm retired. I'm emeritus.
but
But you're right.
the
Yeah. The
fact that
fact
you
is,
have lasted in and survived all the politics,
I had
just
an institution that I protected, but also that protected me. We had a community at the College of Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State, and despite squabbles over resources, the typical issues,
yeah,
and even some cultural conflict, culturally based conflict, based on history, based on old country politics, right? Our nations of origin politics, and
yeah.
all that, we still survived, and we did that because we held unity in times of crisis. Very important. There's a lot of people in our community that will be committed to a cultural kind of unity, expression of tokenistic celebrations of culture. But when it comes to politics, too much division. There are people
Uh,
who really don't take it seriously enough to act.
well, there is going to be people who might side with this guy Mung Chang and say, "Hey, you know, we'll spare this guy, Thomas Kean."
Sure, no, there's going to be a lot of people that will
Yeah.
side with him.
And
Um,
Yeah, look, and this guy Chang, Hong Kong, studied at Stanford. He's a West Coastie. He's not a dyed in the wool Midwest guy, but you hear some of the statements he's made about other things. You know, his invocation of we're Boilermakers and we're, it's like that kind of rah rah kind of. It just makes it sound like I know how he would, where he would stand on the future of the racist chancellor Thomas Keon, and that would be to spare him and keep
You
him
know,
on.
engineers, the builders, the hard sciences, much more. They're second in conservatism, only to colleges of business.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
So
engineers,
colleges of business are founded on the concept of capitalism.
right? Money, yeah,
Okay, but then there are good practices of capitalism and there are bad practices of capitalism, and
yeah,
that those any of those can occur on any institutions that offer coursework in business.
yeah,
So science depends on capitalism, and more so now than 30, 40 years ago, when there was a lot of government money, both state level and federal level money, that
yeah,
went to the big research institutions. Okay. Then it started getting corporatized.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, that is a problem. That is a problem, and you know
That's an
where.
understatement, Mr. Emil. That's an
Well,
understatement. That is a problem. It's a huge problem.
where Purdue is too, right? They're in with the tech folks. They're trying to
Sure.
get the businesses, corporations in
Yeah.
there, and
Ohio and Indiana are really doing a lot of that.
right.
Yeah.
And here is Chang, the incoming president Chang, with his 25 patents. Those aren't
Yeah,
for
hey,
himself.
hey, the
I
dude
mean,
bring the money.
those
That's
patents are there.
exactly what it's. Hey, you
That's
say, even at the state colleges and the community colleges, they have been moving for the last 35 years, right? After Prop 13
yeah,
was passed, they have had, well, now it's 45 years.
yeah,
They have been moving towards getting more and more corporate funding because there's less and less state funding.
yeah.
Okay, and so here we are. Everybody's in the same pool, trying to get people who can publish or can get patents, right?
Yeah.
And to make some money. So
And so,
that's
yeah. So Meng Chang, if it's up to Meng Chang, the incoming president of Purdue, an Asian American, because he's now naturalized, he is a citizen, even though he was born in Hong Kong. He's probably going to side with the racist Thomas Kean.
sure.
And let's see where that happens, because I think this is a good example for the Asian American community nationwide, just to look at it, just to take a little temperature of where the community is. We're not all woke. We're not all one way. We're a diverse community. We see it when Asian Americans go after affirmative action. We see it when Asian Americans look like they may side and forgive the racist chancellor of Purdue Northwest, Thomas Kean. So, all right, Dan, look, let's give it the wipe on this one and move into the next. Look, I want to talk about the $1.7 trillion government funding package, which was passed today. It was passed by the Senate. We talked about it, or I talked about it briefly yesterday. The House took it on, and even though Kevin McCarthy talked about maybe trying to block it as a Republican, they passed it. They
Right.
all passed it because 1.77 trillion. It was 225 to 201, and there were some Democrats who voted against
Yes.
this 4,000-page bill. Now, not everyone reads 4,000.
4,000 pages,
I
and
mean, this
not
is
not
incredible.
everyone's staff reads 4,000 pages either. Can you see us signing that?
Well, you see,
You've
this,
worked there. You've worked there, man.
yeah, I
Who's going
look,
to take on that reading?
you bite off all you can chew, and then you have
Yeah.
other staffers. But here's the thing: if you follow this process, the argument of this completes the 117th Congress. They now have $858 billion in funds for the military that the Republicans
That's a
want.
biggie.
Yeah, and they got some things for education that the Democrats wanted, like 772 billion. But now the government is funded till September, and now the process will begin in January to figure out the budget for the next year. This is politics,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. The first time I saw this closely when I was working up there under Congressman Mineta, I said, wow, it's all of, you talk about the laws you want, you talk about the policies you want, you stick them in omnibus bills. And I just want to remind people that this is how the Filipino veterans got their bill passed, right? It was in an
Yeah,
omnibus
yeah,
bill that people, so otherwise we'd be debating all these things for days.
yeah, yeah.
People hold them off. Omnibus bill comes up. No one wants to shut down the government. They sneak it in. This is how compromise is made.
That's right. The
The-
Veteranos Bill was a rider, it is as they are referred to.
yeah, and it finally, after years, it got not all the money that people wanted for those who were in the Philippines and those who have since
Right.
come to America, like 15,000, 9,000 for the Philippines, I
And look
believe it
how
was.
long it took, though. I mean,
Yeah,
the original bill was passed in 1990.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, it took him. Well, Obama got it through in I think 2008, 2009. But it just goes to show you that this is how the sausage is made. This is politics. The vote was 225 to 201, and when in my household, because my wife works for PETA, uh, PETA helped get the food and the FDA Reform Act through, which says that the FDA must look at alternatives to animal tests, for an approval of drugs. They have an
That's great.
alternative, and they don't have to mandatorily go to animal tests.
Right.
So doesn't cost them any money, but now you have to make all the players, the drug companies and all that. You got to make them live up to the new law.
Well,
And
congratulations to Kathy and her team. I
well,
remember
it's
we've had conversations,
yeah,
our private conversations about this
sure. Well,
recently, and so
cer- certainly it wasn't all her. I mean, the team is
no, certainly
massive.
not. But
Yeah,
I asked about what they were doing in
yeah.
our private conversations, and she explained that relationship and who was on the team.
Yeah, I mean it's various groups. It's not just PETA, but the fact is there was grassroots groups, institutional groups,
Yeah.
all pushing toward getting rid of this mandate to test on animals. Now it's no longer mandatory because it was never effective. But now they have to figure out, well, how do you get people to adopt these new rules? I mean, the law is a law, but it still take some arm twisting in the end. So anyway, so that's good in terms of the animal front. But now there's a bunch of things. I got an email from the the Asian folks, and
Which
the,
ones, man?
the, the,
That's
well,
kind of generic.
the
You're not
Asian
going to genericize us again. Oh my God.
the Asian caucus. I'm trying to find their email. Uh, their email to me was on the Congressional Asian Pacific American Institute. You've heard of them, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
KPAC. And it's written by Judy Chu, Representative Judy Chu,
Okay.
uh,
Kind of.
California 27.
SoCal.
She says, she says, while I'm proud of the progress we have made over the past year for our communities, including the signing of the Inflation Reduction Act and the AAPA Museum Study Bill into law, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders continue to be impacted by anti Asian hate, economic difficulties, and disparities in the nation's healthcare and education systems. And so she's happy that this new bill, this funding bill, specifically addresses domestic violence against AANHPI, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander women, including Native Hawaiian women, as well as the rise of anti Asian hate. Compounding factors include cultural stigmas on speaking out, poverty, and immigration status make it difficult for many AANHPI women to seek justice against violent perpetrators. But today's legislation provides critical funding that is culturally and linguistically specific, which is always important. So they're crowing about that. Let's see, there's 10 million for a no hate act, which was introduced by Judy Chu and Don Beyer of Virginia creates grants that improve the collection, investigation, and reporting of hate crimes data. There's 10 million for um, let's see, culturally competent and linguistically appropriate education campaigns on hate crimes. There's 27 million to fund Native Hawaiian healthcare programs. So there's a bunch of stuff in there for uh, Native Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders. So that's our new. It's not really an acronym, but it's just it's our designation. Also, it includes funding for the Department of Health and Human Services, which houses the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. So this is all just kind of like, it seems like everyday stuff, but it's important because if it's not in the bill, it doesn't get done. So kudos to Judy Chu and her caucus. So that's really it about the budget. I mean, the thing about the budget that's important is that this is Christmas. If you're, I mean, you want to pay lip service, right, to people to say, oh, we're spending money on wars that I mean, there's a lot of that kind of talk. Why are we spending all this money? And yet, there's a lot of money in this package, which goes to, uh, local districts that they
Yeah.
spend, and it's called, the term is called pork.
Pork.
This is pork.
Pork. Pork.
15 billion.
Yep.
15 billion to direct money to over 7,200 community projects in their districts and states, a rebranded form of what they call earmarks. So, you get 15 billion, and this is a good arm twister to get people to vote this through 225 to 201. So, this is your government in action,
Yep.
and that's
There it
good.
is.
All right, so let's wipe this clean,
Money, money,
and
money.
we'll go to January 6th. The report. Now, I've only seen the highlights. I've seen some of the coverage. I know that you've been reading through it.
Yeah, I've been reading
You,
through it. I got my favorite sections, but
and I know that you are you have your law degree, and you're looking at this. Here's some basic questions. The the House had to do this in order to provide the roadmap for the Justice Department. The House, they're some of them are lawyers, some of them are not. The criticism by Republicans of the House committee is that, oh, you guys are would be prosecutors, but there's a lot of heft in this 845-page document. There's some
there
hearsay
is. There
but there's
is.
also a lot of evidentiary heft in there that will help the Justice Department.
If the Justice Department moves on any of it.
You think that there's a question on that still?
Oh
I mean,
yeah. I think they're going to be selective about how they move, and the whole thing on the insurrection though. I don't know. It's I'm still reading through it, but
so
the
what's
full
your favorite section? Your favorite section? You said
well,
you
I'm
had favorite.
I'm I'm going to the table of contents right now, so I can tell you. Um, and you got to go through like all kinds of
I
intro
know
pages just to get to the
there's a
table
lot.
of contents. Yeah,
I, I
but
mean,
it's good.
I mean, my
I love the titles. I love the
yeah.
titles, man.
Well, so what
Okay,
what do you
I'm
think
looking
about
for it.
the insurrection part? Where I mean, I think it shows that if you were watching the hearings, those hearings weren't. I mean, they were easy to understand, but it's pretty heavy, and the documentation only adds to the severity. That if you think Trump was the guy, and the report says all roads, went through Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's
I don't know how he
basically
gets out of
the
that
last
insurrection.
chapter. It's basically
Yeah.
the last chapter and the recommendations, or, the
Yeah.
analysis of the attack. For me, the really good stuff that was some of the details disclosed on even before the fake electors chapter. So I like chapter two, and I like chapter four. Chapter two is titled "I just want to find 11,780 votes." In
Yeah.
chapter four, just call it corrupt and leave the rest to me. Um, the reason that chapter is very important is because it discloses a broader number of people who are engaged and committed to the process of spreading the fraud, the notion
Mm.
of the election was stolen, and also encouraging people to take up, the fake elector scheme. So,
Mm.
which was really outlined more in chapter three, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, those two were really heavy duty. The formation of the plan. What did you think? Did you?
I only went through it, very cursorily. I was surprised at how important Cassie Hutchinson's
Yeah.
transcript, how that
Well, there was a
really,
lot more too. There was a lot more detail
yeah.
because
Well,
the things that they played from her at their hearings
yeah,
was rather limited in comparison to
right.
what's in this
Oh
chapter.
yeah, yeah. No, I know. It's like it just sounds like a 26-year-old who was really embattled trying to figure out what to do, and she realized that she had to get a another attorney outside of Trump world. I mean,
Yes.
you know, I have kids that age, and I'm thinking, my God, what would my kids would they have? How would they react if they were in a similar situation? I mean,
Well,
just a tremendous amount of maturity on the part of Cassie Hutchinson, and she's the star witness. I think she was the star witness during the hearings, and I think um, you see the kind of pressure here that she was under, and uh, she has all the credibility. I think
yes, she does. She does,
so.
and she also refers in the details here to a lot more people
Yeah.
and was disclosed originally by the committee itself.
Well, so
So yeah, go ahead.
if you had to pick one thing, I mean, you've read a little more of it than I have. If you had to point one thing to the most ardent Trumpster who is, hasn't budged.
Oh
I
wow.
mean, is there anything real? I mean, I just think this is so overwhelming. I
Yeah,
think
but
that,
they're not. They're gonna. But see, to, the people who are still committed to Trump are not going to be moved by these disclosures. It's going to be people that were somewhat iffy, that wanted to vote Republican and held their nose, and didn't swallow. Okay, those people might be moved by this, and they might act a little more independently of the Republican Party. You're starting to see that even among people who were successful in retaining their seats, Republicans who were successful in retaining their seats
yeah,
through the 2022 election. So you're already starting to see people come out in public saying that the Trump era is pretty much over. We have to move ahead. They're typically very subtle,
yeah.
but their subtlety belays the fact that they really want to dump Trump. I mean, they just want the guy to shut up.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
Mitch McConnell wasn't being very subtle. He was pretty
no,
clear.
not at all.
Time to move off.
Yeah,
In that he did an exclusive interview, I believe, with NBC. So, yeah, I
yeah,
I
and
think.
he said clearly that if Trump nominates people,
Mm.
he's going to look for qualified candidates, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
Higher quality.
they had the Herschel Walker experience. So I just think that
Don't
it's
don't forget. You're going to
hard.
leave Oz out of that. Are you an
Oh
Oz
yeah,
favor? Yeah.
Oz is a doctor. I mean, I wouldn't go to Herschel
Oh
Walker
no!
for a
Yeah,
diagnosis,
he was a snake oil salesman, dude.
but he was a doctor.
Yeah,
You
he
know,
was.
maybe he healed snakes. but I would pick Herschel Walker over Oz for
Oh
my
yeah.
football
Okay. Well,
my
you know.
football. But that's about it. But
eh,
all right, so uh, I
Okay, Herschel
how
Walker
about
or Marjorie Taylor Greene? Herschel
oh no,
Walker.
neither of them, neither of them. Well,
Yeah,
let
but
me
who's the
ask you.
greater danger? Who's the greater danger?
Oh, yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh,
Yeah.
let's talk
Uh,
about the Asian Americans who are Trumpers, because there are a lot of them out there still.
you know,
Vietnamese, Chinese, Filipinos, um, and the polls, bear this out. There's still about maybe 30% coming from those groups. What do you think? Is there anything that would convince Asian Americans that, aside from winning, saying that, oh well, Trump can't win? I mean, this sort of paints him. This is a week of Trump losses, right? The taxes, this. Uh, I mean, it's just
well,
been.
the thing that Vietnamese and Filipinos have in common is Catholicism, and
Oh yeah,
Catholicism is of course anti-abortion and anti-contraception, and people forget that. People forget that uh, you're not supposed to interfere with the natural processes that result from having sex position number one, right?
yes, yes,
So
yes.
you're not supposed to interfere with that at all. So people, Catholics have been uh, laboring, under those issues for several decades now, even before Roe in the 70s. Remember in the 50s and the 60s, there were women who were leaving the country.
Yeah, yeah, oh
Uh,
yeah.
there
Well,
were
look,
others, yeah,
yeah, but unless if you're a Nancy Pelosi Democrat, then
and
you can
and
live with
and for that
it.
matter, Joe Biden, Democrat.
Or a Joe Biden Democrat, right? I mean, they're
Joe
Catholics.
Biden, Democrat, Catholic. Yes,
Yes, and Nancy Pelosi, same thing. So, I mean, there's ways to slice this so that if you are Catholic, you can find your way toward peace and
well, there's a difference between obeying the law and understanding the social process, and then also avoiding committing sin, right?
right.
So
Well,
it depends on. Now there are conservative bishops that are saying Joe Biden shouldn't be given communion.
right.
You
Or
know,
yeah, they're saying that about Pelosi too.
yeah,
But the line. Sometimes you could just create your own little universe and say, okay, I'm. That's why it was important for people to say, okay, uh, I'm Catholic, but I'm pro-choice, and so it's not my business to tell you. So I'm going to be pro-choice. Does that make me
right,
pro-abortion? I think that's where Catholics find themselves,
yes,
where they are looking for the way they can have it both ways, where they can be anti-abortion in a positive way, but to allow people to have a choice to choose what they need for their health and because of their beliefs as well.
right.
And a
It is.
Catholic can find that there's like a space like the size of this post-it note where you can stand and say
Yeah,
and say,
yeah.
yes, I'm Catholic, but I'm pro-choice. You have your choice, and I have my choice, and I may not have the abortion.
Okay,
That
so
way, I
that's
don't get.
number one about how Vietnamese and Filipinos are affected. By their commitments to certain institutions. The next one is anti-communism.
Yeah,
So that's very very strong in the Vietnamese community, although the greatest adherents to traditional old guard anti-communism are a disappearing generation. Right, they're aging out. Um,
right.
it still holds true. I mean, it's sort of like the younger Cuban population in Florida, right?
Yeah.
They're
Well, so all right, given that, how does an Asian American Trump supporter, generally Vietnamese or Filipino primarily, that seems to be the two, those seems to be the two leading groups. How do they take the January 6th committee, the just the plethora of information, and facts.
I think they react to it the same way that any other pro-Trumper, regardless of race and ethnicity. Obviously, the majority of pro-Trump people are Anglo-Euro descent, um, but there are people of color who are Trumpers who are very pro-Trump. So generally, they source their information from places where this stuff isn't even discussed.
Right.
And then there's general denials, right? Of course, Mr. Trump engages in that. And he's got allies that do the same thing. I mean, usually they're, his allies have more intelligent ways of expressing um, their uh, dismissal, right?
Mhm.
Of the January 6th activity, not just this report, but the whole activity in and of itself. So the first level is it wasn't truly bipartisan. Okay,
Ah,
it was actually monopartisan. It was only one, it was one sided, and
yeah,
Trump.
they had two Republicans. That
Right, right, right. But they are willing to accept that.
right.
It's just Democrats and it's just propaganda. They so you know we accuse them of listening to propaganda. You
Yeah.
know, people on the left accuse them of listening to almost exclusive propaganda. And the fun part is we're correct.
Yeah.
We are factually correct, right? That,
Well, the key thing is, yeah, it seems that the committee, the main point is not necessarily uh, to convict Trump of anything, but they wanted to make sure that he never runs again.
yeah,
And I guess you have to convict him in order to, make sure he never runs again.
yeah,
But
and even that is questionable. You know,
yeah,
I completely forgot about that section of the 14th Amendment.
yeah,
And I feel remorseful that in my last semester of instruction, live instruction, I didn't cover it
yeah.
because I
Well,
should have. I mean,
yeah.
January 6th already happened, but I didn't cover it.
Well, that's all right. I absolve you.
Okay, okay.
But I just think that
Uh, how
I
about how about five Hail Marys and Consiglio Deo?
no penance, no penance. It's an
Okay.
academic freedom, no
Oh, that's
penance.
not very Filipino. That's not very Asian either.
I know.
Okay. You
So,
don't want me to kneel on the palay?
well, look, I think that one of the things that I've been reading about, some of the reaction to this is that will Americans bother to read it? I mean,
No, no.
I saw that the New Yorker was going to publish. They're going to take part in a book publishing with some publisher, and so I bought the Kindle version, and um, but in David Remnick in the introduction said, America has lost its ability to be outraged by all of this, and so the more it's like we don't need more information, we don't need more evidence. It's almost like that's not gonna more evidence is not gonna convince people that Donald Trump is the wrong guy or that Donald Trump should be put away. I
I
mean,
think it will convince some people. As I said, there are people who uh, were for being Republican and voting the party, right? And they will change their minds. There's a lot of reasonable folks out there, and
yeah,
they would change their minds. I have neighbors that were former Republicans, and they're Anglo-Euro descent, uh, native San Franciscan. Members of the family are police officers, right?
right,
So,
right.
and all that, and they've turned independent, But that's San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
So
So anyway, I'm gonna attack it. I'm gonna read, but my mind's made up. I mean, I don't have any doubt about Trump's involvement,
sure.
about how how much the. I mean, I'm open to whatever is out there, but I understand when you're talking about 854 pages, and I'm
This
all
is yeah. There's a lot of proof here. There's a lot of proof here, but there's a difference between what we can see as proof from a journalistic point of view, right?
Yeah,
And then evidentiary proof, right?
yeah.
That the legal point of view, and that's why I have reservations about what the DOJ will do with all this good stuff.
Well,
But
this is just the first batch, right? I mean, more is
yeah,
coming. So,
yeah, more's coming. Let's see what happens. I
yeah.
think DOJ is going to have to move pretty soon. One of the comments that I made to people in that have called me or emailed me
Mm.
was that even if the Republicans take over the House and possibly the Senate, but more likely the House, said the DOJ is still going to be there.
Yeah, the
And
DOJ is going to be there.
yeah,
I think that it's going to be hit like an avalanche, and there's more stuff coming. I just don't see how Donald Trump, even if it doesn't get to the, some kind of conviction with it that prevents him from, or an indictment. Well, he needs to be a conviction that prevents him from running again. I don't see how he can run again, even with this cloud over his head. This is a cloud. This establishes a cloud over Trump world, and I don't think even the most cynical Republican wants this kind of cloud over their party. I, I, I
I don't,
don't see.
yeah, I don't, that's for people who really think politically. The people who are still intransigent and very committed to Mr. Trump, I
Yeah,
don't think they think politically that much. I mean,
they're
uh,
just loyal to him because he's him.
I think I asked this question of a psychologist professor friend of mine, a younger generation, who has some expertise in criminology as well.
Mhm.
And I have to get a fuller statement from him. He said, let's set up a time to talk in greater depth. So I have to follow up on that. But anyway, my question to him was based on my belief that people who still support Trump do that not because of the politics, but because they have the same beliefs. They
Oh yeah,
have, I get irritated mildly every time I hear the word conservative applied to those people because they're not conservative.
yeah,
Okay, not by any dictionary sense of the term, and
yeah.
not by any traditional Republican sense of the term. They are not conservative. They're just pro-Trump
Right. They want whatever he wants, and coincidentally,
because
it's
they
the same thing.
identify with him.
Yeah.
They identify with him. They
Yeah.
identify with him. They believe in the TV show, right? That
In the
he was a competent businessman.
right.
You know.
Yeah, and they believe in his isolationism. They believe in the,
Yes.
oh, we ought to run the country like a business. But
Yes.
as soon as you start believing, which sounds reasonable, but as soon as you start saying the country should be run like a business, people start looking at, oh, $44 billion to the Ukrainians. That sounds like welfare state.
Yeah.
Making, I mean that
That's
that's
right.
crazy. That's crazy. I mean, that's like the kind of Reagan attacks, right? Welfare queens. Zelensky is welfare queen. I mean, there's some Republicans saying that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They are.
Money for Zelensky, money for Ukraine. The American taxpayers are conscripted into fighting a welfare war for this.
Well, and they're not listening to the arguments being made by not only the Democrats and other moderate Republicans. They're not
Yeah,
listening to what's happening worldwide either. That
right.
there is a NATO alliance at work, and they're committed because they have to be, not just because they want to be. They have to be. They understand the threat that Russian imperialism poses across the board. Why did Finland join up? I mean, they got the longest border, right,
Yeah,
with Russia, and so they're jumping on NATO,
yeah.
and Ukraine wants to do the same, and that's what really, really bothers Putin and many Russians. If they really thought this thing out, they would depose that guy and start making deals. But he's a cold warrior that never grew up.
Okay, Dan, we have a comment from
Pam
a
Sailor.
listener. Pam Saylor says, as a let's see, where is it here?
Filipino American faculty at
Yeah.
PNW. Thanks for continuing the convo about our Asian American story with Professor Dan Gonzales. It's an S at the end, but thank you. As a student in ethnic studies at SFSU, oh, that Pam Sailor. Okay. Wow. I never imagined my life in academia would become a movement for change. Well,
Well, I see you remember this
I
particular.
remember the name.
Yeah,
I wish I could place a face. Pam Sailor, please communicate with me at Gonzo1 at that's number one
on Facebook.
at sfsu.edu.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
just do that, and we'll keep in contact that way.
Yeah.
But
Well, look, I'm
y-
glad though there was a Filipino American at PNW because look, before this, I didn't know what PNW was. I Purdue
right,
Northwest. I really had no clue, and it's in Hammond, Indiana, which is really so far away from Indiana. It might as well be Chicago because it's closer to
yeah, it's pretty close to
Indiana.
Illinois. Yeah,
It's like Gary, Indiana, right? Gary is like kind of a suburb of Chicago. But
yeah,
I went to the website. It's a very diverse campus.
yeah.
It's like 25%, I think, Latino. There's black, 3% Asian, and I'm good to see there's an Asian American or Filipino American faculty. I just think it's ridiculous what's happening. Pam, thank you for your comment. I think it's ridiculous what's happening to uh, that they're not throwing the book at
Well,
Thomas Keith.
I'm interested in knowing how the Asian American students have reacted to this.
Yeah, well,
Also, is there any kind of unified critical position taken up by Asian faculty? Because
yeah,
the distribution of Asian American faculty, once again, there's a lot in sciences,
yeah.
and as I
Well,
said earlier, sciences tends to be conservative in the traditional sense,
yeah. Well,
pro-capitalist, all the
I
rest of
w-
that.
I would suggest to Pam that we talked about it more in depth early on at the beginning of the program. So, you know, just if you're on YouTube or Facebook, just go to the front end of the recording and you'll hear us talk about that. But I'm all
It
for.
seems, I think she indicates that she probably heard your earlier discussions as
Oh
well,
yeah.
previous shows,
Well, yeah,
and then she heard me chime in today. So,
yeah. Well, good. I continue. I continue to ask for the resignation, just as a faculty, and I trust that Pam Saylor probably voted no confidence in.
I really would like to hear more about what life was like for her there and how long she's been teaching there and all the rest of that. It'd be very interesting to have a conversation with her.
Yeah, Pam, you can also email me at Emil, EMIL at AMOK.com, and we'll set up a conversation too. Because I'm of the belief that this is our issue. It's one guy, but one guy you can understand. One situation you can understand. And we're not like piling on. He is even the people who defend him know he was bad. That's how you know you've won the fight. People who defend him know it's bad, but they don't want to take the next step because he's white, because he's one of them, because he's from the culture, as you pointed out, Dan, similar culture.
And also political influence. He might have
Well,
political connections.
yeah. So all that plays into this, but believe me, if he gets away with this, you watch to see how this plays out in other campuses with similar situations.
Hmm.
Someone does this, and then they decide to reprimand and not to punish, and what happens? You start seeing these repeat, essentially copycat type situations, and they say, "Well, look at PNW. Look what they did. Let the guy go." And I talked about the New York Times columnist who's an academic defending Thomas Keon. I talked about that yesterday on show 454. Anyway, thank you, Pam Saylor, for your comments. And we got one more thing to talk about, Dan. So we shall wipe
Oh
into,
no, the history part.
well, benevolent assimilation, people need to know. because
Okay.
December 20, we like to talk about anniversaries. Anniversaries are what make history memorable. You say, oh, December 21st, 1898, just a couple days ago.
Mm-hmm.
1898, December, benevolent assimilation. McKinley, President McKinley, says, hey, Filipinos, we don't want to use the C word, colonialism, but benevolent assimilation. Benevolent
Territorial
assimilation.
protectorate. We
It's
were
like
a territorial protectorate.
9 syllables, meaning
Yeah. Ter-
you're going to get effed any way you want. Colonialism, imperialism. This is
territorial
benevolent.
protectorate means what yours is ours, what ours is ours.
So, so tell me. So was a big. This was McKinley's
Well, the thing is,
imperialism,
from the Filipino side, the thing that really pained me, remember the 1898 celebration of a century of the quote, special relationship,
right?
unquote,
Right.
as
So,
in
all right.
master slave relationship. And Filipinos would celebrate that, right? I said, oh, yeah, great,
Well,
And
is
then,
that? I mean, that was it. It was a master slave relationship, wasn't it?
yes, yes. What do you mean was?
I mean, oh, that's right. Passing. Well, the funny thing is, 1898, right? And
Yeah,
then they forget. I mean, if you just go with, oh, benevolent assimilation is great, but if people forget that Emilio Aguinaldo had formed the republic,
yeah,
the rebel republic,
yeah. And his
you know,
brother and his Katipunan fellows.
right? So,
Carpinteros fellows. Yeah.
I mean, basically, 1898 benevolent assimilation. Then 1899 we had the Philippine American War.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was already kind of going on, but
Yeah,
but it wasn't organized, right? It wasn't organized. But 1898 definitely got more organized. There was
yeah.
actually another revolutionary group in the Visayas. I think they were in Negros, but
Mm.
yeah, uh, they had declared their national independence as well. So much lesser known, but there was a Visayan group. So anyway, yeah, benevolent assimilation was really clever, because assimilation theory was actually very young at the
Mm.
time, right? But it was based on people uh, moving from one place in the world to another place in the world, and then learning how to become part of the quote host society. But it
Oh,
was
we were the Filipinos were assimilating with us, or we were assimilating with them.
we were assimilating to Americanness, even though we were still in our own country.
Ah,
And that process meant that we would uh, let's see. Carrie McWilliams said that Filipinos would so willingly and happily embrace, right, the colonial educational process.
right,
And he came up with several examples of that, illustrations of that, and they were accurate. You know,
right. These were Filipinos. Well, the
Filipinos in the Philippines, particularly those of the educated mestizo ilustrado
right.
class,
Well,
right?
because the education that was started there was all these Harvard guys who went there and started the educational system,
Yeah,
right? The
there were
colonial
some from
education.
Princeton too. Yeah, but yeah, that's
I think
right.
the, I think the main guy though
Was Harvard? Yeah,
was a Harvard guy because he knew Taft. I think that
yeah,
I
that's
think that
correct. And
was
they
it Seward?
actually, I think
Was
he
it
founded the pensionado program.
yeah? Was it Seward? I think that was his name.
Sounds
I should
familiar.
should have my
But
names
yeah,
anyway.
he founded the pensionado program, which was sending people who did well in the national exams to come to the great universities of the United States.
Oh, they would send those guys to the universities, and then they would send the savages 1904 to the World's Fair,
Uh,
right?
pardon me.
Is that
Okay, please, audience, what he put savages in quotes. Okay,
in
uh,
quotes? Well,
that's that's
well
the
that's
way
what they
that Filipinos were seen popularly
Yeah.
by the likes of National Geographic, which
Right.
was one of the educational institutions that was designed to rationalize the colonization of the Philippines.
But what I was saying is, there was that exhibit in 1904. They had the gongs. They were headhunters.
They had a large exhibit. Yeah,
It was
I
the
mean,
largest. It was the
yeah, it
largest
was a
in
larger. Well,
at the expo.
that shows you how intentional their desire to rationalize the colonization of the Philippines was.
Right. And that was 1904 after 1898. But the benevolent assimilation was to allow the colonized Filipinos to come here to America
No,
or to,
that was also right after 1904. No, and there's around 1906 or so. But the assimilation process, benevolent assimilation, he was talking about a political as well as cultural process. What we're referring to right now is an educational process that would result in the enculturation of Filipinos to American standards, right?
oh,
And
and
one of them is the
yeah,
imposition of English as the standard, of educational language at the college level.
and this would be because Americans were going to the Philippines and you were Filipinos were going to assimilate into Americanness there. Uh,
Yes,
they were going
initially,
to
yes. So they established a
assimilate.
public education system,
Right.
which the Spanish had not done
Right. They were going to assimilate in place.
in
You're
place.
going to be in your own America right
You
there.
become Americanized while you're right there.
Yeah.
You still be
That's
brown. You still
yeah.
be brown, but you're going to learn how to act white.
Yeah. You're going to have no rights, but you're going to be that's our benevolent
You're going to have very limited rights. They're going to be Your rights are going to be similar to those enjoyed by Native Americans on reservations.
ah. And so when they had the pensionado program, the high scoring ones
Mhm.
come to America, was that like the Curtis schools, the Indian schools? No,
No,
they
they actually went to the big
went
U.S.
to the big
universities.
yeah. That's
They
right.
went
That's
to Cal. They went to Stanford. They went to Harvard. They went to Princeton. Yeah,
yeah. So
and that and
those are
that
the
and
ones
that
who
that trend continued into a voluntary basis post World War II.
right.
Okay,
That there were
so that the educated elite mestizos went to those universities, and that was a trend that continued up until I would say the last 20 years. And
yeah. So mestizos, they don't mean like Filipino and Tagalogs, or they don't mean like Ilocanos and Tagalogs. Not that those mestizos. They, they meant like
yeah,
I'm a Ilocano and
yeah, we
Tagalog.
used to joke about that. We used to Oscar Peter and I, and we would joke about that.
Yeah,
But no, we're talking about mestizo usually referred to the Spanish Chinese, frankly,
Spanish
combination.
Chinese Filipino.
Okay, as for example, Jose Rizal, right, the
Yeah.
national hero of the Philippines.
He was part Spanish,
Yeah,
Spanish,
but
and
mostly Chinese Filipino.
yeah,
Okay.
and that's why. Well, that's the classism in the Philippines, right?
Wow, really?
I mean, well, people don't realize. They say, "Oh, seen one brown guy, seen them all." Well, a brown guy with money is
Yeah.
different than a brown guy with mungo beans.
Yeah, but you have a cousin that's mas puti, man. They look so white. Why is that?
Well,
Genetics kind of skips around sometimes, man.
yeah.
Other than that, okay.
Well, that's the thing. So benevolent assimilation. I guess we can say it didn't really work.
Oh wow.
I
Uh,
mean, did it? I mean, did it work?
yeah,
It
that's a
didn't
better
work in
question.
Ely
That's a
way.
better question. It depends on what your goal was.
Right.
Now,
It didn't
I'm
work.
interested in thinking why you think it didn't work.
Well, I guess benevolent assimilation is what you call colonial mentality, right?
That's one of the results. That's one of the potential results. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that has worked and has lingered, but
There
it
you
didn't
go.
work. It didn't work functionally in terms of, well, the Americans are going to go there and we're going to be part of you and you're going to be part of us. And no, you're going to be colonized and you're going to stay right where you are.
The U.S. didn't give up its very strong economic control over.
Yeah.
This is the concept of neocolonialism, right?
Right.
Outright colonialism means they establish a presence and they impose their own rules and government, in essence imported right from the colonizer's home country. Okay. Neocolonism means that they don't have to do that, but they control the economics and the political structure of the society, or they at least influence it in such a manner that they have virtual control
Yeah.
over those two elements of the society. And the United States didn't wane on its neo-colonial control of the Philippines until the Marcos era.
Yeah. But they were there, um, but it was after Marcos because there was a people power. They got out, right?
People power, yeah, the remnants of people power pushed them out, but they did that just because of the nationalist attitude that
Right.
was very strong
Well,
throughout
yeah,
the voting public at the time, and so they pushed the Americans out. I thought that was very short sighted, and they made a big mistake by pushing the Americans out all in at once
yeah.
because
Well,
they didn't force them to clean up their bases.
but they're
They had
back,
they had
right?
the two biggest bases in the world outside the
Subic and
United
Clark.
States, and they just left. They took all the good stuff right down to copper,
Yeah.
but they left all of the unexploded ordnance, on their artillery ranges.
So we're talking about Clark Air Force Base in Subic
Toxic,
Bay.
toxic, yeah, toxic fuel
But
dumps.
but Dan, they're back, right? I mean,
Sort of.
they're not. I
They're
mean,
they're not the big bases. Are done, but they've made yeah, they have reestablished a military presence, if that's
yeah,
what you mean. Yeah,
yeah, but it's not like it was with Subic and with Clark
yeah,
in the old days.
right.
So, all right, well, all right. So we benevolent assimilation. It's an American thing that was
Yeah,
imposed on
yeah.
the
I mean,
Filipinos. So we
well,
should,
all you got to do is look at the music, right? There's traditional indigenous music.
yeah,
There's Spanish colonial music, right? And
yeah.
then there's Western music, and that Western music is Spanish colonial. Some of it more modern, but also very American.
I mean, like,
I mean, when you turn on the radio, what do you hear?
like ballads. I mean, like Dahil Sayo. That kind of that is
Yeah,
that a
they don't
no?
listen to that every day. I'd get
Oh,
pretty tired of that,
it's not
every if I had
KBS.
to hear it every day. No,
Is it?
they're listening to American music. Everybody's listening to American music all over the world, right? And the
No.
Philippines, they really dig the stuff. I mean,
So
sometimes I wonder why they like certain kinds of American music over others, but it's American music. Um,
what's American music right now in the Philippines?
oh
Taylor
well,
Swift.
I'm obviously, yeah,
Taylor.
they
Taylor
like they're into what we call alternative rock, that kind of thing.
ah, like with
I don't know if they're into heavy metal anymore, but there is a segment that was into heavy metal. They're not that much into it now.
how about what
Um,
about K-pop? Not K-pop.
sure, that's very influential in the
Yeah,
Philippines.
K-pop, and then
Yeah,
is rap like are they into
yeah,
Lizzo?
of course, very much so.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
rap,
I just
rap,
don't know what they're listening to these
rap,
days.
R&B, but the R&B are the ballads, as you inferenced earlier.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's a big group for the kiddie stuff, the teenage music,
Ah, yeah.
that's popular here in the U.S. and in Europe.
Well,
Um,
I just was curious. I thought I'd bring it up. I saw it on my calendar. It said benevolent assimilation, 1898. Pre- President William McKinley,
yep.
and
Who would not live much longer than that? But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, look, this is part of our history. This is part of our shared history, where the Americans said we're going to take you over, Filipinos,
yep.
and um,
And it lasted all the way into the 60s and 70s. It took a more nationalistic turn under Marcos, under
yeah,
Mr. Marcos, and that continued, as you put it, all the way into the 90s with the Pambansa voting to
Get rid of the bases.
get rid of the bases. That's right. And I
Yeah.
think they only gave him 2 years to get out too.
Yeah. Well, I'm all for nationalism. Maybe they could have done it in a way that, they could have made the United States do a little more to clean up.
Yeah, they needed to force them to clean it up.
But
They
yeah,
could also up the rent as well. And
I could see that, but I can also see where people were saying, "Come on, this is let the Philippines be the Philippines." And there's a fair amount of people who were saying, "Go Nationals," here, back, looking at the Philippines, and I'm a Filipino American. I'd rather just see the Philippines be the Philippines and not let America decide for them. But they should have done the right thing. They should have done the right thing and cleaned
yeah,
up the business. Anyway,
yep,
all right. Let's
yep.
let's wipe this one. We're wiping this one. Hey, Dan. I want to end on one thing. I'm not going to talk about the Giants and how much I'm disgusted with the Giants because sports. It's just sports capitalism. I don't care about Carlos Correa, but they didn't want Carlos Correa because of an ankle injury like 9-10 years ago. But they're picking up this other guy from the Mets, same agent, but he also has an injury problem. But they're not paying him like
350 million
yeah, they're paying him
for
just like
13 years.
they're just paying like 10, 15 million, which just disgusts me. I said, this is the way to say, hey, we're a cheap ass baseball team. We really want to be like the Oakland A's. And I said yesterday that the Giants and A's should just share a stadium because they're trying to out moneyball everyone. And,
It's Moneyball.
it's just doesn't make sense because
Show me the money.
what it says is, we don't want any stars. We want to get these lousy players who will have one good year at the same time. So they might win occasionally, but they'll just be competent enough to play professional ball, but not stars. So they can't win consistently. They're just, they're just average players. And that's the kind of baseball teams that the Bay Area has grown to have because of this money ball philosophy. I mean, if they had we got money, we're going to buy the best players. They don't have that philosophy. They had it. Barry Bonds,
Yeah.
they had it. They had that.
Wow, it's
That's
been a long time. Now that you bring it up, it's been a long time.
2000, 1990. I don't know. That's when
Yeah.
Bonds came out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a
It's been more
generation.
than 20 years. Yeah.
And we don't. The Giants are no fun. The Giants are like, hey, we don't care about the Giants. Like everyone cares about the
It's a good thing
49ers.
the food's good.
The food's good, but it's not that good. It's not
The
that good.
food's good, the view's great.
But the game, the team
The
is like,
game, the game. Oh, that.
all right. So look, let's talk about something charitable here. We're wiping clean with the Giants here. I saw Biden's speech yesterday and
Oh,
about
yeah.
Christmas, and I really liked it. Because he hit at the heart of Christmas. He says, this is what he said yesterday. Oh, hold on a second. I have to like plug in into the hole a cord here. All right, this is President Joe Biden, and I liked it. This is his Christmas message, and it's going to be our Christmas message too, because I gotta find it. Okay, here's President Joe Biden. He's talking about working together.
The Christmas story is at the heart of the Christmas Christian faith. But the messages of hope, love, peace, and joy, they're also universal. It speaks to all of us, whether we're Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, or any other faith, or no faith at all. It speaks to all of us as human beings. We're here.
See, as human beings, Dan. See, that's what I like about it. I like you. Donald Trump couldn't say this speech.
All right, because he's inhumane.
because he's not a human being. He's not.
That explains everything.
Joe Biden, he can, this is why you got to love that. I mean, Biden, this is Biden. This is what Biden has had to do after, 4 years of Trump. He's had to right the ship. And, now we got Congress passing this bipartisan, uh, omnibus package today, 1.7 trillion. We have Congress in this bipartisan January 6th report coming out saying, hey, look, this is where January 6th is at. And then you have a president talking this way, being, talking about us as human beings, and that's important.
We're here on this earth to care for one another, to look out for one another, to love one another. The message of Christmas is always important, but it's especially important through tough times.
See, caring for one another, right? And he goes on about talking about being kind. He talks about, hey,
isn't that the Jesus that you and I were raised on?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Joe Biden,
what Jesus were the Reaps raised on?
I don't.
What Jesus was Stephen Miller raised on?
I don't know. They're from the churches with the there's no body in the cross. This is a cross. No body.
Oh,
the
boy.
body. The body in the cross. Look, here's the thing about Biden. I mean, I think you can look back.
I think he's a true believer. I mean, he's a true believer. He is.
Yeah.
He is. He reminds me of all of the really straight and narrow guys that I grew up with. That always believed in the higher values and carried themselves all throughout their lives accordingly. I'm really proud of the guys that I went to school with. They were really good people.
Yeah, I agree, and here's more Biden, because he gets into the politics, and that's he talks about the pandemic here.
The pandemic has taken so much from us. We've lost so much time with one another. We've lost so many people we loved. Over 1 million lives lost in America alone. That's 1 million empty chairs, breaking hearts and homes all across the country.
When he said that, I thought about that, all the people that I know who have died from COVID, and also the time spent. I'm just starting to get back and being with relatives and friends, but it's more like, I don't know if I want to get together always, because of we're still in a pandemic.
Some news came out today that at least locally, where the COVID surge isn't going to be as strong as the flu and RSV.
Oh, and RSV, yeah. That's good. Well, so he says that, but then now he gets into politics here. He says,
our politics has gotten so angry, so mean, so partisan. And too often we see each other as enemies, not as neighbors, as Democrats or Republicans, not as fellow Americans. We become too divided. But as tough as these times have been, if we look a little closer, we see bright spots all across the country. The strength, the determination, the resilience that's long defined America.
See, I like that kind of sentiment. You would never hear, Donald Trump say that. You'd never hear Donald Trump appeal to the people in that way. So,
but my question is, how many Republicans would you hear anything like that from?
Well,
I don't think you'd hear that from. There's not even McConnell, even in the kind of bilateral way he's been talking lately. I don't think you'd even hear him say that.
I don't know. I think
maybe Romney.
I think there are some. But you might be right. I just think that's the tone, that's the change we've needed the last 2 years, and it's a shame that you look at polls and they still look at Biden and they still say, oh no, he's not the guy. But I think that when you hear speakers like that,
despite everything that he's gotten done, he ain't the guy. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
He's
I mean,
he's a winner and a half, right? And he keeps crossing the finish line, smiling,
he's
and
done it.
and, and everybody says he's not the guy. Okay, who the guy? Who the guy? Or who the
Yeah.
gal?
I
Whoever.
mean, here's the guy who says, he talks about how there's more that unites us.
Because there's so much that unites us as Americans, so much more that unites us than divides us. We're truly blessed to live in this nation. And I truly hope we take the time to look out for one another, not at one, look for one another.
Yeah, see, looking out for one, being kind, a simple smile, he says, that gets me in the Christmas spirit. You talk about the news all the time. That gets me in the Christmas spirit. So Dan, I want to say Merry Christmas to you. Thank you for being part of this program. This is show 455. And I think I'm going to start doing this a little more sporadically going forward. And people can, I might do it. People should check 2 p.m. Pacific and check on all the sites, and they'll see when I go up live. But I really have appreciated your being part of our conversation.
I appreciate your invitations, and I appreciate the discussions. We always have great discussions. It's too bad that we can't put everything that we talk about privately up online, but I think that's true of most people, including journalists such as yourself.
Well, look, I'm happy that we get to do this. I'm happy that the technology allows us to have these conversations, and so that people who are out there can check it out, or they can, we don't look for it to do anything more except be a resource for people. But Dan,
I'm
really,
really heartened also by the communication from
oh
Professor
yeah,
Pam Saylor. I'm really interested in catching up with her and seeing how she's
well,
been doing all these years.
I'm
The
sure you can.
70s is a long time ago, bro.
Okay, hey, listen, Dan. Merry Christmas to you
Thank
and
you
your
very
family,
much.
and
Maligayang Pasko in
yes,
Tagalog.
happy
And
Pasco to you.
to the whole family,
Yeah,
I'm glad that you have a bit of a reunion among the kids and stuff.
yeah.
So,
Well,
and
a
best
little bit.
wishes, of course, to Kathy. And then we'll go out and get another meal. And again,
Yeah.
same.
All right. Listen, say hi to you and yours, and Dan. Merry Christmas. Really. Thanks for being a friend of the show, friend of mine, and and for your opinions and your insights into all the things we talked about today.
Well, you've got me looking at the PNW and Chang situation. It's really curious now. So,
Let's see what happens. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
A new president on January 1st. Let's see if he takes no action or if he puts a kibosh to all of
Well,
this.
I'm glad the whole issue went national. Not everybody's going to pay attention to it, but at least it went national, and CNN and MSNBC and everybody carried it.
It's
New
not.
York Times, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not dead yet.
it's out
Anyway.
there. It's
All
out there.
right, man. Hey,
Thank
Malagai and
you.
Pasco. Take care, man. All right, there he is. Dan Gonzales, Professor Dan, Asian American Studies, College of Ethnic Studies, my good friend of the show, always comes on, usually Fridays. Maybe we'll have him on. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do. I have to prepare for this New York thing, so I'm gonna be maybe I'll still be on at 12. I want to have that commitment at 2 p.m. Pacific. Just come on and say it'll probably be a shorter show. Like we've gone on, Dan and I like to talk. What can I say? Dan and I just like to talk. But anyway, so yeah, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. I just said that I might not be here, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try. Shorter, maybe 5-minute bits or something getting it off my chest. But we're going to continue talking about the Purdue thing. That's important. This is a national thing for Asian Americans. We can't forget it. Okay, so on Twitter at Emil Amok, on YouTube at Emil Amok1, on Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media, also on amok.com. That's our show. Don't forget, Mark, February 16th through March the 3rd, the Frigid Fringe in New York City. I do this show. I talk about Filipino Americans, Asian Americans. I talk about my life. There are some jokes. There are some punchlines. It's not all just, It's not a, show. But it is a storytelling show. I tell some stories about my life. And so, I love to I'll be meditating tonight. I meditate morning and night. Loving kindness. That's the holiday meditation. You think about someone. Some days you think about someone you love and you say these little prayers. I would call them prayers, chants. Sometimes it works with people you don't love. Sometimes it works with people you dislike. Because you put it out there in the universe and it comes back. Like I said, twofold, threefold, however many folds you want. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Happy holidays, seasons, greetings, Merry Christmas as it applies. Thinking about you. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Go over, check out the replays, amok.com. But till next time live, mahal